Makes sense? Yep. Mike, where are we at actually? I was over here, sorry. So let's go here first.
First, yeah. I know that I'm the greatest of your creations.
Mm-hmm.
I have some problems with that. Of course, I'm trying at least intellectually focus on my sins, but nothing no greatness is coming to me when I focus on that. And so it's complete empty almost, I feel.
Yeah.
But I guess I have to believe it if I if I want to pray that. How to find some...
You don't have to believe it to start to pray.
No.
You can go to God with the feelings that you just expressed.
Yeah.
That I don't feel like I'm a really great creation. I feel like I'm someone full of sin.
You could say to God, look, the prayer we've been shown says that I'm the greatest of your creations, but I don't agree. Like, when I look at my life, it's a bit of a mess. I've created a bit of a mess. I've made a mess. I feel like a mess. I feel like I'm not going to get anywhere. I don't feel very powerful. I don't feel like, I'm the greatest of all the things I see. I feel like, I'm pretty average or even worse. And so you can be honest with God about that, firstly. That's the important thing. Secondly, once you are honest about it, then you can also see, I don't love myself very well. I don't love myself like God actually loves me. Does that make sense? Like, you've probably never given that much thought that you don't love yourself the way God loves you. And that love of self is an issue. You see, on earth, a lot of our problems result from a lack of love of self. When you love yourself, you don't need other people to love you. Right? So when you don't love yourself, you get very needy. You get very, like, octopusy is what
suction onto people.
You sort of want to suck on people, get energy from people, feel things from people because you don't feel them for yourself. But when you love yourself, you don't need that. You feel safe and comfortable with yourself. You feel like your personality is good and so forth, right? So in between those two states, it's first important to recognize many of us don't have that feeling. We don't have the feeling we're the greatest of God's creation. We don't even have the feeling that we're very nice or that we're very powerful, right? But I would like to remind you too that most of you have created sin. So you're pretty powerful. The sin is an illustration of your power, right? Many of you have not experienced the power of not creating sin. So you haven't really had a feeling that experimenting with your power when you're not sinning. Do you understand? You've had this. Many of you have had this feeling like you've not even considered power as an issue. God's trying to give you power, by the way. He wants all of his. And when I say power, I don't mean the kind of power where people are hungry for it and want to hurt others with it. I mean the kind of power where internally you feel like what God created you to feel and what God created you to be. In other words, you feel you are the greatest of his handiwork. You feel that. God wants you to feel that. When we don't feel it, there's usually a lot of very sad emotions attached to those lack feelings. So sad emotions like, that you were treated bad as a child generally or not even acknowledged as a child, not feeling any worth as a child because of how, your family acted towards you or friends acted towards you, experiences in your life that make you feel that you're not have much worth. These things accrue in your soul as sadness. So when you feel that you're not the greatest of God's handiwork, there is going to have to be sadness to be felt. Mm-hmm. Most people don't want to feel it because it's bad. It feels bad. It feels gutting with the sadness, that kind of sadness. They'd rather feel good about themselves than cry about how bad about themselves they feel, right? Because of that, we end up in a state where we're resisting our own sadness. Once we do that, it's very hard for us to feel loved by anybody. Because we're going to demand people care for us or love us, and so therefore we're not treating love as a gift, and so we won't really feel love at all. You know, that's the consequence. So when it talks about there that you are the greatest of God's creations, we know that most of you don't know that. You don't believe that. You look at your life and you go, but, you know, I can hardly get a day done, right, with getting anything done, let alone being the greatest of God's creations. But you've got to consider that that's because we're so embroiled in the sin of the world that we really have no power left. There's basically a sliding scale of when we receive or can act in power from God's, in the universal perspective. And the sliding scale is this. Do you remember graphs when you come from school? Yep. The sliding scale is this. That line is power. God's version of it. How good you feel about yourself and what you can get done and how you can get it done and the effort you can put into things and the strength you have to do it. That's what I mean by the power you have. On this scale, what do you reckon's on this scale? The sin you engage. The greater the power comes from the least amount of sin. And the more sin, the least amount of power you have. Does that make sense to you? So in other words, when I sin a lot, I've got the least amount of power. When I don't sin at all, I have the maximum amount of power. Does that make sense? Everyone gets that?
Who disagrees? Anybody?
Yeah, a lot of people feel the opposite way, right?
A lot of people feel differently.
But see, the problem with the world is the world rewards sin. So it gives you the illusion that you have power when you sin.
But if you look at people in leadership on earth, a lot of them are steeped in sin, but they need a lot of people to get things done. And they don't get things done very
And they need
effectively.
control of a lot of people. They can't do it by themselves. Right? They can't even get into power without spending billions of dollars and huge amounts of effort and huge amounts of energy that are other people's energy, not their own, because they don't have enough energy of their own to do that. You understand? And so the world rewards the illusion of the power.
It creates the illusion.
By having everybody, so the way you get power in the world is you meet everybody's addictions and everybody likes you.
Or
right?
you manipulate, you exploit everybody's addictions,
and everyone
is
you.
afraid of you. One of the two.
One of the two,
yeah.
right? So that's how power works on earth. God takes away power from persons who sin. So from God's perspective, a person like who are leaders of the world, you know, the people who are the most leaders of the world, the biggest, most powerful leaders of the world, from God's perspective, they have the least power of all. Right? And in fact, in the universe, everything they try to do, God's trying to stop. Absolutely everything. Like there's hardly anything they do that God is not trying to stop. Right? And the law is also trying to stop them as well. But because addiction is rewarded by these people, many of them have the illusion they have power, but it's not really true.
And it's not really the definition you gave of power
No,
either.
remember I said power is strength to get things done, yeah?
Inner personal strength, yeah.
Strength, not with a T. Strength, that's not right.
TH on the end, yeah.
Strength?
GTH.
GTH, yeah. What am I thinking? Strength. What else? Passion. Drive. Energy. Addiction.
Conviction.
Potential, yeah. Yeah, confidence. See, a person's, you look at all the people in power now, they don't have a lot of confidence at all. They need a lot of people to agree with them before they can get anything done, right? So these are all the things that are sort of involving power from God's perspective. And and what happens is the more we sin, the more we reduce the potential of all of these things, right? And that's a fundamental law of the universe, actually. And this is why the celestial spirits have the most power in the spirit world, because they're the most loving. And the people in the hells have the least amount of power in the spirit world, actually. They're the most unloving. You know, we've said to you many times that spirits are influencing a lot of what's going on earth, right? There has to be, there's more than 20 billion spirits in hell. It takes more than 20 billion spirits to influence what's going on earth. A couple of celestial spirits, if they were on earth, would influence everything in the opposite direction. Just a couple. So on one hand, there's 20 billion going in the wrong direction, and it takes all their effort and all their energy, and they even swap over. The way they organise, it's sort of like, I'm running out of energy. Can you take over from me? They do that all the time. I'm serious. Like, you know, you try influencing somebody towards doing something, if they don't already have a heart for it, you got to spend a lot of energy on it, don't you? Yeah, and they've got to do that over and over and over and over again with 8 billion people. So, you know, it's a lot of energy. It's a lot of effort. They are depleting their energy so much that many of them are losing fragmentation even with their own body. They're actually fragmenting their appearance. So you look at them and they're distorted. They look like monsters. That's why many of them portray themselves as dragons and stuff, because they don't want you to see what they really look like.
But
right?
Also we'd have to say that because of the state on the earth is very
sinful. It's very easy.
It's very easy. They actually
when I say easy, it takes 20 billion of them.
But imagine if we on earth collectively moved the sin back to here, how much more effort would be required to influence
they
on
wouldn't
the
handle
earth.
it.
Even just a smidge.
Yeah.
If there was enough people who moved it back this way,
yeah.
the level of spirit influence on the earth would dramatically decrease. Yeah.
Yeah, even if we went to the top of the first sphere in our condition, the level of spirit influence would drop so dramatically that you'd hardly recognise the earth. It would be so drastic, right? Because the amount of energy they would need to try to make it go back the other direction would be so great they wouldn't handle it. They can't physically handle it.
This is why sometimes we make the joke about the ant emotions, because realistically, you know, on the earth, we're all, a lot of us in this situation, and we make a big song and dance about shifting a few emotions that would get us back to here and would change the whole entire world. Yeah.
Yeah. Sad, eh? Just by being a bit more loving.
Just by having some more sincere releases of feelings and longings to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this equation is very important to understand. Many of us on earth believe the opposite. We believe that the more we sin, the more powerful we are. And that's not true. The worth itself gives you the illusion that that's true because everyone meets their addictions. But from God's perspective, the more you sin, the more power is taken away from you. Yeah.
And did you want to talk about the feelings about feeling bad about yourself in relation to this scale?
Yeah, feeling bad about yourself is a sin. Interesting. So the more you feel bad about yourself, so let's say you feel good about yourself here, the more you choose to stay feeling bad about yourself, can you see what's happening? The more you're going to sin. Right? And the reason, and you end up with more demands on people, you end up with wanting them to make you feel good, you end up with pushing them into trying to make you feel good, you engage things like sex and food and money and other things to find worth to make yourself feel good and so forth. And fundamentally it's because we don't believe already that we're the pinnacle of God's creation. So it's important, and this has been something very difficult for me to deal with in this life, has been to stop myself from the addiction of feeling bad about myself. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've had to work my way through quite a lot of emotions to do that. A lot of it was driven by my fear of other people's attack. So I started seeing the relationship between me feeling bad about myself and the level of attack that other people want to. The more other people attack me, I had a tendency to then feel worse. Do you follow? Which means that they felt more encouraged to attack me. Can you see that? The worse I feel, if I'm the downside, I'm getting down on myself, down, down, down. This encourages the opposite, the people who are in the addiction of attacking others, to increase their attack. And I realised that I felt that if I made myself smaller, I thought that I would stop their attack. Can you see that? And there's this tendency of most of us to think that if we make ourselves smaller, we don't be our nature, we don't be our personality like we were talking about yesterday, we don't exercise our desires, we'll stop the attack because we're afraid of it. But what I found is when I felt my fear of other people's attack, I started having more worth towards myself, more feelings of positive towards myself, and I got attacked less. And I thought I was going to get attacked more. But I get attacked less. People often say to me, like, why aren't you in prison already? It's because I'm feeling better about myself. You follow? Yeah? I say a lot of things confronting to a lot of people. And very few people treat me badly now compared to what used to. Does that make sense? It used to be every single person I met. The worse I felt about myself, the more that was encouraged. The less I feel about myself. And I after a while, I understood the dynamic because God's feelings about it, you start to understand. And I started to see, by me feeling bad about myself, the opposite of the truth, right, I encouraged them to feel they were superior. And in them feeling superior to me, they felt greater. And in feeling greater, they felt they had more justification to make me feel worse. That makes sense? So I started to see the relationship between attack, my history of attack, first century memories about what happened to me many, many times, had an impact on me greatly in terms of having to deal with, the level of myself, putting down myself in order to control the attack. It's been a problem for our soul. Mary has done the same thing as well, putting herself down all the time, trying to avoid attack. And she's going through the same process I've been through, just learning not to do that, And how much that encourages bad spirits and bad people to attack you is quite marked, yeah?
And it's important to understand the difference between just feeling the truth of your sin and feeling bad about yourself and holding on to that as a belief, a global belief about yourself. Yep. So, and sometimes people hold on to this idea, I'm just bad, to avoid the specifics of their sin. Yep. But sometimes it's exactly what Jesus is saying. A lot of times. That we just want to put ourselves down because we think everyone will get off our back then.
Yeah. And that usually comes from a childhood of that happening, where people were on your back and you learnt the lesson that if you put yourself down, before they attacked you, they generally didn't attack you as much, is the thinking. But all they did was get more control over you, unfortunately, because you put yourself down so much. Yeah.
You got more compliant with their will rather than discovering your own will and exploring and experimenting with your own will. So remember that a lot of humility is being willing to emotionally give up your own beliefs and ideas about yourself in favour of God's.
Yep.
So, this part of the prayer is saying, I'm going to be humble to your opinion of who I am.
Rather than mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Many of you carrying around bad feelings about yourself, God wants you to give them up. You're going to have to grieve some things, and you're also going to have to feel some fear. So what I've found is there's a lot of fear that causes a person fear because in their childhood, the attack caused you to feel that if you put yourself down, you'll get rewarded for putting yourself down. And the reward is no more attack, right? And so you put yourself down enough like that, you start feeling, it becomes a part of your very psyche. It becomes a part of who you believe you are, a person with no power, no strength, no energy, and you start acting like that as well in your life. You don't make decisions, you don't make choices, you don't go for things, you don't, create a life for yourself. You don't do all of those things as a result as well. And all of that often comes from this feeling that in your childhood, whenever you were trying to do something for yourself or were trying to grow in any way that was out of harmony with your parents or your upbringing, everyone attacked you, right? And put you down. So in the end, you learn to put yourself down to avoid it. Right? It's a learned behaviour.
And then, as you're saying, then as you're trying to experience more of God's feelings about you, often there's fears come up because you feel, this is going to ramp up the attack.
It's going to make it unsafe again. My life's going to be more unsafe than it is now. So you feel very resistive to doing it. And so I found myself very resistive to having any positive feelings about myself. Mm-hmm. That makes sense? Yeah. And the more harsh the treatment as a child, probably the more resistive you're going to be. So some of it's just verbal, like pulling you down here and undermining you there and stuff like that. So that's enough. And that's verbal abuse. But for many of you, you've experienced actual abuse, physical violence, sexual violence in your childhood and other things like that. It's going to be harder because you're going to feel like, if I be myself more, all those people who abuse me to get me into that position are going to start attacking me again. Right? Yeah. So there's a lot of fear in it. And I had to work through a lot of fear. I probably had a good solid 4 years of fear, actually, for a period of time before I met Mary, before I even had enough sense of worth to even think that I could even do things. It was before I even knew who I was. I went through a 7-year period of lots of fear, lots of terror, working through just even embracing my life, right? And when I met Mary, it ramped up again because Mary had a habit of attacking me when we first met. Because she wasn't
I wanted the
happy.
men to make my fear go away.
Yeah,
and I was very afraid all of the time because of the other attack that was coming towards us.
Yeah, what happened was Mary wanted me to accede to pander to people who were attacking us.
That's what I was doing, and I wanted
felt
Jesus
unsafe.
to do it. Yeah.
And so then I had to deal with, even Mary wants to hammer me, and I had to even deal with that as well, like feel about that and work my way through having some sense of inner strength where I can go, no, Mary, you're wrong, without, feeling like I have to bow to the pressure. Yeah. So it's taken a fair while, and I'm still working on actually this issue of self, how you view yourself. Yeah. Every single person I met feels that I'm not sufficient enough to be Jesus, without exception. Actually, many of you, when we first met, felt exactly that, right? Many of you come to a seminar and you think, is this guy Jesus? Like, I feel that. Every single person I meet is like that. And some of you have changed with that over the years, just from experience or time or whatever. Many don't. Many after interacting with us feel more definite about it afterwards than before we met, yeah? And so it's just a constant thing that I'm having to work my way through with all this projection that I'm not worthy enough all the time. So it's been a big thing for me. And for any of you who have this problem, you're going to find it's going to take some hard work, sincere work on your behalf to let yourself start to believe what God's trying to tell you. The interesting thing, though, is the more you receive his love, the more you'll feel it anyway. Yeah?
Then the love will cause you to feel like, I can't treat myself badly anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm afraid. And then there's the work to do on the fear.
Yeah. When I was in my 20s, my whole life was governed about serving people to my own detriment. I did it to the point of exhaustion every single day. I would come home absolutely hammered, and I spent every day trying to help somebody, all day, every day trying to help somebody, and I used to come home absolutely no energy at all in the end. Just no strength, energy left, and then I would do it the next day. Yeah, had no concept of love of self at all. And really it's God's love that's helped me regain, and our closeness to our own soul that's helped me regain that love of self. That makes sense? Yep. Yeah. So, these are just feelings. They're all ant-emotions. Things to feel. And they'll help, if you recognise them, you'll grow greatly from them. This is why the prayer is so important, right? Because everything you read, you go, oh, gee, I have that too, and oh no. And then many of us, when we talk about sin, you're thinking it's the bad things you do to others. But actually, a lot of our sin is the bad things we do to ourselves. You understand? And one of the bad things we do to ourselves is treat ourselves as if we're worthless. Yeah, many of us do that. What do you think a smoker's doing when they're smoking? Aren't they saying, I'm worthy of death? I'm worthy of all this bad air in my lungs. I'm not worthy of clean air. There's a lot of sadness in that. Yeah, a lot of feelings of poor worth in that. When you have some worth, you won't feel like smoking anymore. You just won't. Right? There's a lot of these kind of feelings that are involved in a lot of things we do on earth. A person who overeats, same. Why would you overeat? It just makes you fat and unhealthy and unhappy and prone to heart disease and early death. Why would you do it? You've got to have some level of bad treatment of self involved, don't you? To do it. Yeah. So it's a lot of times you'll find that the relationship with God helps expose to you how badly you feel about yourself. Yeah. And when you work through it, come out the other end. Like I compare myself now and I go, wow, I was in such a mess, in my 20s, man. Just I look back at my early 30s now before I started making any change. And I go, if I had continued on that course that I was on, I would definitely be dead by now. Definitely be dead by now. I was so embroiled in this bad treatment of self and, man, it's just without these changes, I would have died from either bowel cancer, heart disease. I would have died from many things, potentially many things.
There's a long list.
I was overworking for people to get my worth, bowel cancer. I was sad all the time and trying to overcome my sadness by feeling good about myself, by trying to be loving to others, heart disease. I was feeding myself badly. Just from that, I possibly would have died. I used to drink 20 Cokes or 40 Cokes a week.
One for every workout.
I would have died from... by the time I was 18, the doctor said I'm prone to pancreatic disease, right? Failure, right? So because of my addiction to sugar, just that one thing. I used to eat a 4-litre tub of ice cream in one sitting. I used to have 3 a week. Yeah? And by the way, it wasn't just ice cream, it was covered with...
caramel sauce or something.
Caramel. Yeah. Caramel syrup. And the amount of things I used to do, by the time I was 30, I was tubby, and getting fatter every year as well. And my personal life was a mess. I was not being honest with my partner. I was married at the time, wasn't being honest with her in the sense of saying, no, things are wrong here. She was doing a lot of things that I felt were wrong, but I wouldn't say anything about it. I'd just tolerate it. I was embroiled in a religious faith that caused me to work and work and work and work and work. And I was thinking I was pleasing God doing that, working so hard all the time. I didn't enjoy much of it. I was quite unhappy. I used to go behind our shed in the backyard and cry a lot, You know, I was pretty much a mess. I was 33. Yeah. So having a breakthrough emotionally helped me greatly, and then also having the breakthrough into, you know, wanting to have the relationship with God back helped me the most. Yeah. Make sense? Yeah. Time.
Yeah, it's time.
Yep. 2 minutes.